everyone. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me today. I appreciate it. And I'm going to give you a very quick overview of ChargeUp. And it's very informal. Jump in at any point in time if you have questions. We'll definitely take them obviously at the end. And then we'll have my contact information at the end as well. So if you have any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them. So very quickly, we're going to cover is, what is ChargeUp? I'll briefly mention the Nenny Battery Tech Hub, and then really get into the program benefits, who we're looking for, the process, and get into the Q&A. So with that being said, what is ChargeUp? Without me sitting here to boringly reading you this slide, I'm going to try to pull out the highlights. We are an accelerator program that was funded by the NSF. It's a 6-month program, and it runs from April to October. And our next cohort 3, is going to be launching in April. So we do have applications that are open that close next week, next Monday, I think it is the 19th. We are powered by New Energy New York, which is a partnership of the Kauffman Southern Tier Incubator out of Binghamton. And we're tied to the federally designed Battery Tech Hub. So we have a lot of access to a lot of different network partners, which I'll discuss and show in just a moment. And then, as mentioned, we were funded initially by the NSF. We still have funding, so we're good to go this year. So not to worry, nothing's going to change. And then lastly, we are modeled after a program based out of NextCore, which is a program called Luminate, which is an optics, photonics, and imaging accelerator. I actually was the first person hired there and launched that and led that for about 6 years. And then there's also the manufacturing accelerator. So we tie those in I'll explain it a little bit better through the program, the curriculum throughout the program. So it makes it a very unique opportunity for battery startups and energy storage startups. So as I mentioned, we're part of the Tech Hub for Nenny. So if this is a map of New York State, it's kind of angled and bizarre, but Binghamton is down here in this larger green circle here. I'm actually based up in Rochester, up by RET in that area. So all of these different dots represent that some program or some organization that's tied to the battery tech ecosystem that we have access to, that if you're part of the ChargeUp program, you would actually have access or at least introductions to. So it's a really strong network, which is really the key part of the program. So very quickly, briefly, just some staff. So you'll see that it's not just me running the program, but we definitely have support. I don't know if Carrie might even be on the call right now. She runs our marketing. We have Kevin, who is a program intern, MBA student, and then Bandana Katosh is the principal investigator. She's based out of Binghamton University as well. But I'm the day-to-day lead. I've led multiple accelerators as managing directors and program directors. I have a lot of experience in running accelerators and helping people scale startups and really end on the business end. So the battery tech part, it really lead to the experts, which you'll see in just a moment. Most importantly, what did the 6 months look like? We are mostly virtual. So we do Tuesdays and Thursdays. We do programming. Usually it's noon Eastern time because we have companies from all over the US, and that's a key component. We only can accept US companies or companies that have a US presence. So if you have a subsidiary and you're based in Sweden or somewhere else, that works for us too. We do mostly virtual, as I mentioned. We do 1 week a month in person. And that's a rotating week. So, for example, in April, when we kick off, it'll be in Binghamton. And then in May, it's going to be in Albany because we're going to be part of the New York BEST conference, which is the Battery Energy Storage Conference. And then in June, we'll be in Rochester and working with RIT and their battery program. We take July off for travel, so we still do the virtual, but you'll have no travel in July. And then in August, we're back in Binghamton. September, we're going to be in New York City for Climate Week, as well as our Investor Summit. And then we end the program in Binghamton in October. So it is 1 week a month. It can be a rotating member of your team. It's really key. So as long as it's C-level participation, so for example, the CEO can attend in April, and then maybe it's the CTO that's coming in May. Maybe they're both coming in June. You can also send junior members of your team as well. So it doesn't have to be just the C-suite members. They need to attend, but you can have as many people as part of your team participate as possible. And I highly recommend it, not only on the in-person, but also on the virtual, because the more people that you have on your team that are interfacing with us and networking, just the larger your chance of getting a network connection, of things happening, creative collisions, whatever you want to call it. And I've launched a startup myself, and I've done that. And then I've run accelerators, and I've seen how they work in terms of the networking is really the biggest biggest key piece that you can take away because it's again, it's not really what I know, it's who I know and how I can introduce you to people or help you with, getting over uh, or getting to a milestone or getting to some inflection point. We have mentors that are part of our board that you'll see on our website, and I'll show you them in just a moment as well. So you'll be meeting with them monthly. You'll be meeting with me bi-weekly. They're usually like half-hour meetings. So in terms of time frame, I would say it's roughly 4 to 5 hours per week. If you're some weeks gonna be a little bit less, maybe some weeks a little bit more, but it's gonna be pretty scheduled out so you know well in advance, hey, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays, obviously you're gonna do the curriculum. You'll know what they are months in advance. You'll book a meeting time with me or the ChargeUp team well in advance. So it's not, things just flipping up on your schedule because we really understand that you have a business to run. The purpose of the program is really to, if you put it in a nutshell, it's to really start you from wherever you are today, whether it's zero, one, two, and finishing off with a built-out due diligence folder. Because our goal of the program and the thesis is really how do we make you more investor ready? And obviously, having a due diligence folder is really key. It's one thing just to have the documents, it's another thing to understand them and have them prepared properly and having a sales plan and having your assumptions and your financial model right. Because those are all the key components versus just saying, I have one of these. We culminate in an investor summit. We're finalizing that right now, but I believe it's going to be a co-event with another organization that we work with that which last year had a couple hundred investors there. And this is based in New York City during Climate Week. So very valuable culmination. So what are the benefits? We sit here and we sit there and say there's a 200 hours of curriculum. I don't necessarily know if that's really the biggest benefit. The benefit out of that curriculum piece is coming from a founder's perspective are the people that we're going to introduce you to that are either teaching those courses or going to be like someone like Dr. Stan Whittingham, who's on our board, who is a Nobel laureate, and him giving a talk on his journey and how he went from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 and where he is today, and really being able to understand how do you take your companies from where you are today and scaling them to where you want to go tomorrow. So we do everything going over I don't want to say basic things like HR and things that every company needs to very battery specific pieces. Again, whether it's a Stan Whittingham talk, we had Virgil Besson speak last year, and he's launched multiple different startups in the battery space, had manufacturing out of China, manufacturing in the US, and really understanding, how do you get your very specific battery and energy storage. It's not a typical SaaS company or a software company where it's, you might be better off in Techstars versus here where we're really, as far as I know, the only battery accelerator in the country. The mentorship, very key. You can see just some of the mentors on our board. You'll be able to interact with them. They will be giving you advice. They'll be meeting with you monthly. If you are assigned, I'll make it an example. If we have Balky and Jim assigned to your company as your mentors, that doesn't mean you can't reach out to John or Bijal or Innocent at any point in time. We highly recommend interacting with as many of the mentors and his board as much as possible. As I said, with bringing your team here, it's the network and it's the connections and it's the engagement that's going to drive all of your success. So the interesting thing is that we actually do not take equity, and we actually pay you to be part of the program. So it's a very unique, excuse me, a unique setup. There's no economic development hook where, hey, you got to come here and you got to, hire 2 people in New York State and you have to stay in Binghamton a year or whatever that case is. Because it's a nationally funded program and it's very uniquely set up, it was done in a way that makes it, I don't want to say it's a no-brainer because, everybody's got different goals that they want for their businesses. But if someone was going to tell me they're going to pay me 25 grand and I'm going to have access to all of these different pieces and I'm going to get training from all these different people and all this different support, you'd be crazy not to at least look into it, to apply and at least say, hey, wait a second, does this really fit with what we want to do? So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is you have the opportunity for up to $100,000 in funding support for technical assistance. And so what that would be is, let's say you need to get battery testing or UL certified. So you want to work with Intertech or someone to get that done. You would make a proposal. Believe they come out in August or September. And then the New Energy New York team reviews the proposal and they either give it a yes or a no. So we've had, I believe it's 52% of our companies have submitted proposals and we had them accepted. So it's a very high percentage. It's not a guarantee. I'm not selling that as part of the program. Hey, you're going to get this, but it is an opportunity that is very doable and very quantifiable, I would say. So that's really the two key financial components. So what we're looking for, as I mentioned before, you have to be a US based startup. You got to be obviously in the battery supply or energy supply chain. You have to be past the lab scale because if you're still in the lab scale, we really can't help you at that point yet. But I still would recommend applying only because it's good to be in our ecosystem sooner than later. The more we know about you sooner, the more we can see, hey, they applied last year. Let's see how what milestones they've hit. Um, Team, you have to have at least two full-time employees. You might have one full-time person and I'm making this up, four full-time part-time, or excuse me, four part-time people, which would actually equal two full-time people. So that's one way of doing it as well. You have to be incorporated, which I'm sure most of you are. If you are not for some reason, you can still apply, but you have to have your ink in place by the time the program kicks off in mid-April. And then, as I mentioned before, we have to have C-level members participate because without that participation, you'll just be able to say, "Hey, I went through the ChargeUp program," and there's really going to be no value or benefit change of place between the two, between us and you as a company. Give a quick spotlight. So I came on board for cohort two last January. Our first cohort, which was a total of four companies, one of them was ATO Systems. ATO's has partnered with Kodak, who, if you are part of the program, you'll go tour them when you're in Rochester and be introduced to them. They've received numerous investments since they've been in the program, and this year they were named the Battery Manufacturer of the Year. The key I'd like to also mention is they were cohort one. I wasn't part of the program then. I came in last year for the beginning of cohort two, but we worked very closely with all of our cohort members. So we took ATOs. I've worked on their pitch deck. I think 2 months after I started working on the program, I started working with Standard Potential as well, which is another one company. And we also brought the cohort one companies to our demo day for cohort two. So it's like once you're in the program, even though you graduate or you end the program, the 6 months are over, we're very engaged and active with our portfolio companies. So it's another key component that's a little bit different than a typical turn and burn accelerator, let's say. So how do you apply? We use F Success that hosts our application. So you might already have a profile on there because a lot of organizations use it. If not, just set up your profile, you put up your pitch deck. It's very simple. And then you're going to go through our application, which I think is like 20 questions. And they're going to be all the questions you should have the answers to. What problem are you solving? Are you pre-revenue or revenue? How much money have you raised? All the basic questions that you would already know the answers of being the founders of your company. And one of the key things I tell people is, yes, we're New York State. We're based in Binghamton and the area. It is not an advantage if you're a New York State company, and there's not economic development being part of the rubric of how we are choosing companies. But let's say that your company in California and I'm sorry, did somebody have a question? Oh, okay, sorry. So let's say your company in California or wherever, and you are applying and you want to work with Cornell or Kodak or somewhere in Binghamton, or they make something that's unique to the area that we have access to. Definitely highlight that in the application because from our perspective, the key is, hey, we want to get great companies and great founders, but we also want to have companies that we can help. Because if we can't help you move the needle, then it doesn't really do that much for us either. Because again, we're not taking equity. So for us, success and our KPIs are a little bit different than a typical, hey, we're putting in $100,000, here's a safe note or a convertible, and we need to have a return in 3 to 7 years or whatever that's going to be. So again, if you are in the application process and you do have any connections or very specific use cases for people within our network, definitely highlight that because even if you don't make it into the process of selection, we still would want to make the connection for you if we can. So let me show you the timeline. We're getting towards the end. January 19th, which is Monday, is the application deadline. It's a pretty short application, probably takes about 20 or 30 minutes. Then we do an internal review, and then about 2 weeks before this, the dates might change. I think it might be February 17th and not the 23rd now. We're going to do a pitch week where be given a couple weeks notice, and then you're going to do a 7 to 10 minute typical investor pitch. You'll pitch to our board and the internal charge up team. We then ask you questions, go through back and forth, that type of thing, and then any follow-up. And then about a week or two later, we make our decisions on who we're going to have in the cohort. So cohort one was 4 companies, cohort two was 7 companies, and cohort three, this upcoming cohort, is going to be 10 companies. Cohort then kicks off April 13th in Binghamton. So I tried to go through that as fast as possible, but hopefully clearly so that you can get as much information, but then you really getting to the questions because that's really the key.